people need to understand it's important as you go through life, as you matriculate through life, not to compare yourself to other people. Comparison is the thief of joy.
So what do you find? What's your home dynamic? What do you and your fiance, while you're in isolation, what are you guys doing to pass the time? Both your kids are not living with you, right? They've moved on to.
Yeah, they live down the street in an apartment. So up until 4 years ago, I lived in an apartment, and so I was finally able to buy a house, which in LA it's very, very hard. You could be working in TV for many, many years, and people will think you have a lot of money, and you have literally just enough to make your bills. The apartment that I was living in with the kids, they've stayed in. And so then we got a house. So they're together there.
That's nice that they're so close.
The dynamic at home is good, you know? What were you about to say, Linda? I'm sorry.
I just said it's so nice that they're so close, just down the street.
So I haven't seen them in the pandemic because they're little shits. Sorry.
Whatever you want.
Okay, cool. Because like they understand, and we keep having clear conversations about like, listen, it's not about you, that you're not sick. It's about like the people you're coming across in contact with. And they're like, well, I'm just going to chill with like, you know, a friend. And then I'll go on their Instagram, and they're so stupid. They're at like a little gathering of like 7 to 10 or 15 friends. It's in a house. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, no, we're all safe. And I'm like, I just want to just strangle. So I actually haven't seen my children other than FaceTime in 7 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And you look so happy.
Damn, it's like refreshing.
Oh my gosh. I would say, you know, first off, I don't understand how you, looking like you're 22, have a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old. I mean, it must be your skincare line.
It is my skincare line at Mantle. But no. Just quickly, the way I became a father is an interesting one. The first and only girlfriend I had when I was 15. She was my best friend. We decided, hey, she knew I was gay. And I was like, you know, we both want to lose our virginity, and I feel safe with you. You feel safe. And so we decided to lose our virginity to each other. And right after it was finished, I was like, so I love you, but we're never going to do that ever again. And so she moved away. And, you know, as you know, because I think we're about the same age. I'm 39. How old are you?
42.
Okay, great. So we didn't have cell phones like this. We didn't have social media. So when she moved, it was like, she's gone. Unless you had an address or a house phone, she was gone. And about 10 years later, when I was done with college, I moved to LA. I got a stack of papers on my doorstep for back child support for this kid that I didn't know about. And I thought it was a joke. You know, punk was big back then, and I was on MTV's Real World, so I thought they were punking me. And I thought Ashton Kutcher was in my house, and I thought me and Ashton Kutcher were going to fall in love.
We've all thought that at some point.
Yeah. But it didn't, it wasn't a joke. It was real. And she actually didn't come after me. She had applied for benefits for her child, for her and her children. And the state found me. And so all of a sudden overnight, I became a father of a 10-year-old. And then he was living in Texas, where I grew up. I moved back to Texas to meet him. Didn't think I was going to get custody, and then realized I'd missed 10 years. And with her support, petitioned for custody. And then a year later, adopted his little brother because he was having some issues, and because I worked in social services, they were going to pull him out the house. And I was like, well, pull him with me for like, you know, while things get figured out. And then all of a sudden I became a father of 2 overnight, and now they're 20 and 23.
Wow.
And that's how I became. So that's why I look young, but it's because I was a fast-ass teenager.
So you were working in social services. Was this before MTV?
Yeah, it was. It was, well, I kind of was. So I got a job in South Central LA, and working with underprivileged African-American Latino youth. And then there was a show on TV called Pimp My Ride. Y'all remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And so the organization I was working with, my kids were getting locked up. And so I went down to MTV to protest. Like, I'm straight out of college, so I like did a PowerPoint presentation, like got a couple of the moms, got like one of the local news stations to come down. Like, I mean, like I was like thinking like, yo, I'm the man, I'm doing this. And I got there, and some woman came out and was like, who did this? Who organized this? And I was like, me, fighting the man, get the show off of TV. It's a bad image for kids. You know, they're stealing from other people's cars because your show says it's good. And she was like, will you come back the next day? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to make change. Literally went back to work the next day and they were like, we want to cast you on The Real World because you're gay and black and crazy. And and I was like, hell yeah, literally quit my job 2 weeks later. Don't know what happened to those children. Don't know what happened to those mothers. Just young and irresponsible. And that's how I got on MTV. So I was working in it for a little bit and then got on MTV and then, you know, had to get back into it after you realize reality television isn't a real job unless they're giving you multiple seasons.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's one thing we hear all the time. People think, oh, you're on TV and new talent that want to have a TV show. They're like, I just want to get a show, just one season, make it rich, and then I'm off to my own thing. I'm like, that ain't how it works.
That's not how it works at all. You know what I mean? No. You need a multiple.
I was in the beginning, you know, I was making more money when I was right out of high school than I did when, you know, season one. You got to prove yourself, and then you continue after season one. Yeah. So
it's so real, and I'm glad you said that because people look at us where we are now and they think, oh, season one, you're banking and all that stuff, and it's like, no, it's a journey. Like I was making more like you working in social services, which made nothing more than I made on any reality show I did until I got Queer Eye, and then it was like, oh, you're getting a real salary and you're getting seasons and blah blah blah, you know.
Yeah.
At such a young age, when you were planning that first protest, what in you drove you to do that? Like, you know, now it doesn't seem easy now, but we have so many resources now, and it's you know, normal to see.
Yeah, but easier for bigger reach as well.
Yeah, back then, what was it that drove you to push for something like that?
Well, I mean, I grew up Black and gay in the South to immigrant parents. And so I feel like I've always had to fight for what's right. And then my friend group has always been very diverse. And when you're growing up in Texas and you have your Jewish friend being called really horrible names by other white people. And I didn't understand that because I was like, both of y'all are white. What are y'all doing? And then like, you know, one of my best friends was Haitian and the other one was Asian. And then people are making comments to them. And it was like, you get into this mentality very quickly that either you're going to accept it and allow it to affect your self-esteem negatively, or you're going to fight against it. And luckily, I learned that, you know, not only bringing attention to it, but really having solution steps is what's important, you know? It's one of the things that I think we're missing nowadays. Like, I love that young people want to get on social media and post about, you know, something that happens and, you know, bring attention and, you know, but then after a week it's done and you've forgotten about it and you've moved on and there's no real sustainable action steps. And that's why I don't think we see any change. So for me back then, doing the PowerPoint presentation, going to MTV was the first action step along of 6 that I didn't accomplish because I was young and fame got into the way. But it was very much like, I have to make change because if I see something influencing these young Black and brown boys, if I don't do something now, it's just going to continue on and on. Mm-hmm. And the first step in my mind was get it off the air.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you find when you see how much success you now have and how you've reached people and touched people and emotionally connected with people globally, when you travel around, what's the difference that you see from families in overseas or families here or down south?
Not a lot, to be honest with you. I mean, one of the things that I realize is that, you know, people are experiencing the same emotions and hardships and happinesses globally. And out of our cast, I'm the one that people come to talk about their emotions. So like when we're at events, people come up to my castmate Jonathan, and they're like, yes, honey, I want to dance with you, do my hair. They come up to me and they're like, my grandfather passed away. We're financially struggling. And it's one of the things because of the show. And I realized that we're all dealing with the same stuff. You know, people are feeling scared, they're feeling alone, they're feeling ashamed, they're feeling happy, they're feeling inspired, they're feeling hopeful. And so that's why there's not that many feeling words. So if you can just tap into that, you can give a generic solution. You know, I don't try not to, but you can give a solution that's going to inspire them. Because, you know, somebody in Japan, when we were there, was dealing with the same things that I've seen people deal with in, you know, here in America. You know, like one of the episodes, her name was Yoko. She was amazing. And literally she talked about the fact that she felt like she wasn't worthy because she wasn't the good daughter. Mm-hmm. And literally in season 5 that's coming up, I can't give away details, but literally there's the exact same story of somebody being like, I'm not as good as the older sibling, and why, like, and it's this thing of like people comparing themselves and losing themselves and feeling down on themselves because they don't think they're as worthy as somebody else who's accomplished or done certain things. And so, you know, if you can just tap into it, you know, you realize that we're more alike than we are different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful. When we were reading up on you, the one point that I just couldn't stop thinking about was your outlook on, I don't even want to say coming out. Instead of calling it coming out, you should look at it as allowing people or inviting people into your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's just such a powerful and simple pivot of language that, you know, releases the burden of the person who has to do it or chooses to do it.
Yeah, it's less about this and it's more about this kind of a feeling.
Yeah, whether it's coming out with a secret or like a feeling, like you shouldn't have to come out. Like it's about inviting people in. And I thought that was really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a big believer that there's small shifts in the way that we, or pivots, as you said, in the way that we share things or express ourselves, like really do have dramatic changes. When I worked in social work, I worked here in LA at the LGBT Center, and my youth, I realized if I said one thing, it changed the way that they looked at it versus another way. And so let me give you another example. Obviously, you talked about letting people in, because I do believe that's the process we're doing, is that you're deciding who you want to let into your life. Mm-hmm. And you shouldn't feel pressure to do that with people who are strangers or people, and it doesn't make you ashamed of who you are. It gives you the power to decide who you want to let into the personal parts of your life. I appreciate you guys, I know you guys, but I don't know every aspect of your life. And as we get to know each other more, you'll let me in. And that's because you trust me and you love me. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you're ashamed of those parts.
Yeah.
But another shift in language that I say to the kids, and this is another example, is, when someone says, how old are you? I usually ask them, what chapter in your life are you? And the reason I say that is because when you think about age as chapters, and you think about chapters as a book, it makes you really realize that if this was the final chapter, how is this going to be written? Am I doing things that make me happy? Am I trying new things? Because when we talk about age for us, a lot of people we're afraid to talk about death, first of all. And so it seems like, it's whenever, it's coming, it's just another moment. But when you think about a book and a chapter, that book has a close. And if you think about each chapter, you want to know, what are you going to look back and read on? Is it going to be exciting for you? And I realized when I said that to the kids, that little shift in language, all of a sudden they were like, oh my gosh, what do I want to write in this chapter? It just became a different way of approaching their lives versus me saying, how old are you now? And we all get that question that's so generic. And we're like, oh, I'm 12, I'm 13, I'm 45, I'm 42, whatever. And you just move on with it instead of realizing that what you're doing actually now is writing a new chapter, and you should be figuring out how much stuff you want to do in this chapter that's going to make you happy and bring you joy.
And by the way, you're saying how you like the idea of people, letting people in when you're comfortable with them, when you know more about them, when you love them. Linda must be like the epitome of what you're looking for in somebody, because she lets everybody in so deep. And within one time of meeting somebody, she will say, love you.
Oh, yeah. That's actually sweet.
At the end of this conversation, she's going to say, bye, I love you. Yeah.
I will say it back. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Done.
I mean, that's really sweet, but I mean, I do find that I can connect easily with people, but I've found that lately I've been learning to be more protective of of how much I share and what I choose to share. I think because people who know me as being like super happy and positive and bright all the time, sometimes I find that is a burden to upkeep, and I'm not allowed to show feelings that are contrary to that. So Amen. I've been trying to be more protective of just how I feel, how much I feel, and like who I share it with.
Well, and also with the relationships, some people that you let in can be very exhausting,
and it's draining
and it can bring out a more negative energy. And
but I think the more you understand of yourself, like, I don't choose to share my current challenge with a certain someone. you come to understand it in someone else as well. Like if someone's having a shitty day and you may think like, oh, that person's acting like a dick. Maybe, that's fine. Cause like you have those days too.
Yeah.
Like it's no big deal.
I think that's such a good lesson, especially like that right now in like quarantine time and all this stuff and just period in life. Like you have to be protective of your feelings without losing vulnerability. But also I think there's something about people who are always joyful and people who are always the strong ones that you can lean on. People forget that they have a myriad of feelings and emotions as well. And we don't check up on them and say, hey, can I create a space for you today? Because what happens is that people get into a pattern of feeling like, oh, well, you're the strong one, so I can come to you when I'm weak. Mm-hmm. And not realizing that that's unfair and it's selfish. And it's part of our training as a culture, to be honest with you. It's, as children, you're told that someone will be there to listen to all your problems. And, it starts with your parents, which they should be. But it takes a long time for kids to realize that parents are adults with their own problems and everything else. It then happens in school where you're like, oh, I have a problem. Teacher solves it. Principal solves it. Someone solves it for me. And so it creates these boundaries within our minds that assumes that if I have a problem, there will always be somebody who I can dump on. And dumping is such an unhealthy thing. And I think as a culture, we need to restructure that. I've always thought like when we go back to school, life skills should be taught in a different way. Like, because what we should be teaching kids at a very early age is, when your parents do something for you, you ask your parents, how are you? Because right now we're not in a space for that. There's no time for you to ask a teacher how they're doing because you're just like, this is your job to teach me. And I think if we could like change our culture, it would allow people to see people in a different light and understand that they are strong, but they're also weak. They're happy, but they can also be sad, and allows people to realize like, oh, I shouldn't just come to you and dump because I'm feeling this way. Yeah. It allows them to understand there's more of a breadth of an experience to have with someone. So
I love that. I love that outlook too. Especially when you think teachers. Think of how many students a high school teacher has that comes through their different classes, and there's always something happening, and then there's the pressure from the school board and everything else, all the pressure that are on teachers, a lot of them underpaid as well, and then you think the kids are always just thinking they're the ones that'll solve the problem or deal with something. That's a lot of abuse that they can take throughout their career. So I love that idea of checking in with them and to say to your teachers, hey, how are you? Are you doing okay? Can I help you with anything? Or
I have to tell you the story. There was a teacher that I had in the 9th grade who was the coolest guy ever. He was our theater teacher. And I remember one day I was this is a true story. It was like wild to me. My family had ordered pizza and my theater teacher came to the door and delivered my pizza. And I opened the door and I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you ordering pizza? And it was the first time that I realized it changed my whole perspective in going through high school. And this is no joke. If you ever talk to any of my teachers, people used to call me like a teacher's pet because I used to say to teachers, like, is there anything I can do for you? Because I was just so aware that like, oh, this is not your only life. And like, my issues are not your only issues. You have your own children, your own husband, your own families, your own financial stuff. And seeing that teacher at my doorstep in a Domino's outfit, it didn't make me, I wasn't like saying like, oh my gosh, you should be ashamed that you're, working, because he was surviving. He did what he needed to do. Yeah. But it made me realize, oh, he's a person outside of this. And like, wow, his day doesn't stop when my day stops. Because when that bell rings, I thought we all were done. And you're still figuring out how to pay bills. And I think just having those perspectives just help. And it changed my perspective like dramatically.
That's actually a great experience to think of seeing. Well, I remember there were a few times when we were younger seeing our teachers outside of, at the grocery store or...
Yeah, you freak out. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What? You have friends? You have a social life?
I'll tell you one that was a little weird, though. So I don't think I've ever told anybody this. So when I was 16, there was the local strip club where we lived. And I was tall, and a couple of our friends and me, we were tall, so we didn't look like we were 16. They thought we were older, and I'm sure they didn't care. They were a strip club. But we were like, we got to go in there. This is like the coolest thing ever. We got to check this out, because we're just immature 16-year-olds. Yeah. And so we walk in trying to act all confident, and we go in, and there's like a stage, and there was someone dancing. and we go and sit down by the stage, and we're like, just act adults, act really old. Nobody was in there. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody even looked at us. And then I look over, and one of our high school teachers was sitting. It was lunchtime, and they were sitting at the table next to us, and we were just like, "This is too weird. We have to go.
Oh
Yeah, we have to go right now."
Did
the
he
high
see
school
you?
teacher see you?
I honestly can't remember if they did. I know I never spoke to them about it. I will say one teacher that did really affect my life in a positive way, Mr. Connor. So he was, now what grade would this have been? I think so in our high school, it was like a work at your own pace from grade 9 to 12. It was a new system, a new school, and it was meant more like a college style where you had work areas and then a testing center. And it was trying to be more of a transition for kids to college. And so the harder you work, the more you can, the faster you can get through your grades and your classes. Anyway, this one teacher, he was in the science area, and Jonathan and me, we were little pranksters. We were always pranking teachers and students and stuff all the time. We weren't bad kids, but we were definitely, we had a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Anyway, on a daily basis, Mr. Connor would have to discipline us. And every time he would be like, okay, guys, look, I know you're trying to have fun, but let's start fresh. As if nothing's ever happened. Let's start again. And I remember thinking when I was grade 9, I'm like, what a loser. Like he's such he wants our approval so bad that he just keeps forgiving us. And we were taking advantage of it when we were younger. But then as I got a little bit more mature, as we moved into grade 10 and into grade 11, then I realized he wasn't being some desperate guy for the attention of these students. He was trying to be supportive and not just come down on us and get after us just because, we were a bit of trouble here and there. And in the end, in my grade 12 year, I ended up, long story short, but our counselors did not give me the right advice, and I didn't have the credits I needed to get into my major in college. Well, Mr. Connor, this was 3 weeks before the government exams, Mr. Connor ended up doing a crash course for me. I needed physics, and I needed to do the entire grade 12 course of physics and then challenge the government exam. I had to get an A in it in order to get into my faculty. And so for the 3 weeks prior, during school days, every evening, he studied with me for an extra couple of hours, crash coursed it. I aced the government exam. I just squeaked in. I got like 86. And then I got into university. I got into college, all thanks to Mr. Connor, who I thought in the beginning was not somebody that was of anything to write about. And in the end, I'm like, you're the reason I'm doing what I wanted to do. So thank you.
That's amazing. Isn't it great how you find those like people who you didn't even think were supposed to be there, who were like major players in your life that you were like, oh, F you, you're, whatever. And then you're like, oh, you're here for a bigger purpose. You know what I mean? Which is awesome. That's a cool story.
So tell me about growing up. You're from Texas. You're from Houston.
Yeah.
We loved filming. We filmed down in Galveston, and I'm a big sports guy too. I know you are too. And I loved, our friend is the GM of the Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey. And so I love checking out basketball down there too. What was your family dynamic growing up, and what shaped you? Do you find the most? What sort of advice shaped you into who you are today?
First of all, if you ever want to just get me Rockets tickets from your friend, I'm not opposed to taking freebies. I know people are afraid to ask, and I'm not.
You know what?
All right.
How about you got to come with me? I'll take
I will.
you.
I will
go to a game. Yeah, totally.
100%. Life was good growing up. It was my mother and father. I'm the youngest. I have 4 older sisters. They shielded me from a lot of stuff until I kind of got to 14. So my father and mother came here from Jamaica and Cuba. My father was abusive as hell. So like I missed a lot of that, but it then shaped me in like how I, would step up to, protect people who were abused or whatever. And then when my parents got divorced, when I was 15, going on 16, I moved to Florida with my dad, and my high school that I actually graduated from is Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, where the shooting happened. And, right. So it was good. I mean, I can't lie. There was a lot of turmoil just coming out, as people say, but I had a good group of friends around me, and most of my challenges came from like the egotistical, toxic crap that, my father had because he grew up in, Caribbean culture and was told like, your son being gay is not okay, and like it makes you less of a man. So it was a lot of that, but I surrounded myself with friends who I'm still friends with today, and it kind of made it through. So it was
how old were you when you realized you were gay?
I realized I was gay at 5, 6.
Wow.
Yeah. And part of that is because I was over sexualized, which I think we over sexualize kids um, way too early. It's something that I was conscious of when I became a dad, of trying not to over sexualize. There's a way to have conversations about educating your kids about sex, but I think we over sexualize kids in ways don't even realize. Like, I remember something I used to get, I'm like you, Drew. I've been this height, 6'2.5", since I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been the same kind of body size. I'm maybe a little bit skinnier, but I was always bigger. And so I remember early on, people always come up to me and being like, "How many girls you got? You know, how much sex do you have?" You know, and it was like these questions that you ask little boys that you think is like, "Oh, we're connecting, we're seeing how, what they are," but you're really just over sexualizing a child before they need to be sexualized, because now all of a sudden I felt like, "Oh, I'm supposed to have multiple relationships. Oh, I'm supposed to be having sex. Oh, I'm supposed to be doing this and that," when those conversations wouldn't have happened if people weren't sexualizing me. And so because of that, I remember thinking about sex, not my sexuality, but sex and who I wanted to have sex with at such an early age, because I was over sexualized. And
I was very different from that, in the sense that I was the most extremely awkward person around girls in high school. I was not thinking about sex. I was just thinking about, will I have the courage to just ask them on a date?
Which is a very normal experience. That's a beautiful experience. You know what I mean? But
I think,
no, I'm just saying, it was the toxic guys around me. Like, my fathers and uncles from early on always asked me like questions about sex. And
wait, but you said at 5 or 6 you realized you were gay.
Yeah, because what would happen is that, so for instance, uncles would come around and they would say, "Oh, that's your little girlfriend," you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna have, like, they would ask me questions about like, "Oh, so you got a kiss yet? You kissing her yet?" And so what happens is that because you're sexualizing me now, I then would go into my room and be like, at 5 and 6, I remember this at kindergarten, me thinking like, "Well, I don't want to kiss her, but I do want to kiss him." So immediately it went from sex, from being, like just having conversations that they thought were harmless, to me now thinking about sex when I shouldn't have been thinking about sex at 5 or 6. So I didn't have the language to know I was gay. All I had was, "Oh, I don't want to kiss her, and everyone keeps telling me I should be kissing her. I want to kiss him, but they keep pressuring me to kiss her and to hold her hand, and to like putting us together in photos saying, when you get married and when you have babies." And I'm like, why are you talking about babies to a baby? And so it made me realize that I wanted men, but I didn't want girls. So that's how that kind of like was about.
And I have a question for you, because I know you've worked so much in the LGBTQ community, supporting as well, and it's something that I've always been curious about, and obviously with the childcare working that you've done and everything too. We see a lot nowadays. A lot of people, they don't want to label their children. They don't want to label their children boy or girl. They don't want to stereotype them with pinks and blues, but also. They're talking about letting the children decide who they are, what they relate to, whether it's female or male. Do you find when kids are a lot younger, just like you're saying, confusing them with the idea and sexualization of kissing and whatnot, do you find it can be confusing for little kids if you start to not explain to them anatomy or differences between boys and girls?
Yeah, I think there's a way to discuss anatomy. And I think that's a healthy thing for parents to do early on, because I think that too often we get older, and especially girls that I, have or are friends, they're not told about their bodies until later on in life. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the minute they start having their period is like when we're going to start talking about their bodies. And that by then, there should have already been conversations about your body and what your anatomy is. And there's ways to have that in a healthy conversation that's not sexualizing. I think when it comes to gender identity, I do believe that there's a space to talk to kids about how they're assigned at birth. So it's, I sometimes feel like we get into I get in trouble with this all the time, just to let you know. I think we get into a space where we become a PC culture where we tell people, don't put up blue or pink because you're now defining your child's gender. And I'm like, well, I mean, really, if I put up purple, it doesn't matter. Like, the color doesn't define. So like, if someone wants to do that, it's fine, because really what you should be teaching people is saying, as you're talking to your child about their anatomy, also be open to saying, how do you feel about your anatomy? like giving them the space, because
Mm-hmm.
all trans youth I've ever talked to, by the time they're 3, 4, 5, ironically, and this is hard for us to experience because we didn't go through it. So it's like when you think about being 3 and being like, I'm in the wrong body, I don't understand that because I didn't go through it.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing when I tell people I knew I was gay at 5. They're like, really? You knew so early? And I'm like, well, in my experience, I knew immediately this was not what I wanted, that this was what I wanted. But I don't think that we should get so PC of getting into the space of like, you know, you can't put up pink and you can't put up blue and whatever the case may be. It's about helping parents to understand, or helping families to understand, that as you're talking about anatomy and as your child is growing, leave a space open for them to come to you and communicate honestly about what they're feeling. And I think you don't have to specify gender. It's about what I did with my kids, to be honest with you. I did this and we have a great relationship, and I've heard them talk about it, so I'm not just speaking for them, you know, now that they're older. But when they were younger, I would always say, hey, if there's something you want to share, I'm going to promise you 2 things. First of all, I'm not going to get mad because you're sharing with your honest feelings. And secondly, I'm not going to share your feelings with other people unless you give me permission. And it created this space where, you know, I was in a place where my kids can come to me, and what we have in our house is they would say, on King and Prince. That's our little code for them to know, like, hey, Dad, what I'm about to say to you, I need to share. And I don't want you to share with anyone else. And I also don't want to get in trouble for what I'm sharing, because that's the fear that stops people.
Yeah.
And so if you can leave that space open for your kids, the gender conversation does not have to happen in the way you think it's going to happen, but it allows a space for your kid to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. And for them to know you're not going to judge them and then they're not getting in trouble for what they're feeling. And giving parents, teaching parents how to say, I appreciate you sharing your feelings with me and sharing what you're going through, but I need a little time to process the information and also to educate myself. And I love you. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we don't teach parents and tell them that it's okay to say, because they feel like in that moment they have to give an answer. And that's when they usually open their mouth and say the wrong thing. But I don't think, going back to that gender identity, I don't think that parents should have to stop giving up blues and pinks at, you know, birthday parties. I think it's stupid. I think just give your child the space to be honest is what families need.
Yeah.
The space to have that conversation. And I think on the point of getting in trouble or being PC, I think a lot of us struggle with that, especially now with social media. Anything you say, you know, can be criticized as supporting one way or another, which is good because it's just all conversation to be had, and we all need to learn ways to say things more eloquently that's not offensive, but it is a learning curve. Like, even after just reading your perspective on rephrasing the term coming out, I feel like, oh shoot, a post I did last week for our last guest, Caleb Marshall, he's gay, and we talked about his coming out process, but now I want to go back and rewrite that. But I think, you know, even though I feel guilty for saying what I said last week, I think it's beautiful that I now have the vocabulary to share it more eloquently and honestly.
Yeah, you know, and I think I appreciate that, but I think, you know, one of the things that I do hate about our culture right now, and I don't use the word hate, but I do hate that we're such a PC culture. And I don't think conversations on social media are constructive. I don't think, I mean, like we've gotten to this place where people can't express what they're feeling. And so we're not really having any real conversations. We're just bullying people in the corners. And I don't like that. I mean, as someone who tries to help people communicate their feelings honestly, I think it does such a disservice when it's like, you can't talk about your experience or your feelings around a topic that you didn't understand. And I think we don't give people that opportunity. Like, I worked in social services, and I, you know, not to go back to the, you know, the gender identity, but like, I work with parents who love their kids. But if you haven't lived an experience, it's hard for you to understand. And so it doesn't make people transphobic. It makes them unaware of your experience. And you have to give them time, first of all, to educate themselves. And you also have to give them time to grieve what they thought their life was going to be or what their family was going to be. And on social media, we don't give people those times and those space. And so really what happens is they just get bullied into a corner where now they're just saying something publicly because they're like, okay, I know now what to say. But does that really change their hearts or minds? I don't think so. No. You know what I mean? And I think like, we got to give people space to like say, I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't like, I don't get it. And be like, hey, since you don't get it, and since you said something that offends me, are you open to me giving you some education so that you can learn? And also checking myself and being like, it's okay if you don't agree with me on everything. Like, that's also something that's super okay that all of a sudden in like 2020 and 2019, we don't have anymore. Like, it's like either you're all with me or you're against me. And I'm like, F off. Either I'm just a human being and you're a human being. Yeah. That's really what's happening. It's like, you don't have to agree with everything I say. And that because you don't agree doesn't make you fundamentally a bad person. And I just wish we could get back to that.
I agree.
And
we were
more constructive conversations.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
My little soapbox. I apologize.
No,
I like it. I mean, we're the same, and we, we were just talking about this before when it comes to how we all treat each other, and it's the same with the environment. We're obviously very passionate about the environment and doing what we can to give back and support. To give back to like sustainability and growth and everything, and solar and renewables instead of fossil fuels. And one thing that we learned from Dr. Jane is the fact of not attacking the other side. You don't want to attack the other side. You want to try and find a common ground where you can connect and communicate, and then hopefully they'll see from your passion and from a rapport that you've created, they'll understand your side, and hopefully you can pull them over. And I truly love that sort of way of thinking, because anytime you attack anybody, I know anytime someone comes at me aggressively, my wall is up and I'm ready to fight. And so it's the same in any aspect of life, in any relationships, and with any communication.
Yeah, I think all of this really distills down to us needing to take the time to have conversations.
Yeah, completely.
And that's all it is, because you've seen, I don't know which company it was. I think it was a beer company that did this campaign where they brought two people together into a room, two people with very different backgrounds, religious and political beliefs. And you would think that they would butt heads, but they sat in a room with a beer for an hour and they talked and became friends.
Seriously.
Because they were given the time and space.
Because this is the thing. There's 2 points I just want to make. But, when you look at like when a brand or somebody does something bad and they just remove the ad and apologize, all the people who saw that ad before and supported it don't understand why. They just feel like, oh, I'm being silenced. And so there's no education that's really happening there. And so it's like, great, you took the ad off. And so I'm happy because I felt like the ad hurt me. But there's still a million people who are like, why did that ad get taken off? That don't have any education and who aren't coming up to you. And so there needs to be new ways of saying, hey, the ad, like re-put the ad out. And at the end of it, say, we realized this is wrong because of this, would love to have a conversation or something. I don't know what it is, because taking it off the air is just not going to help the conversation. And that's why we see things over and over again. And I experience this a lot because I always try to reach out to people who are different than me and see their side and have conversations. You all, like we said, we met at, Dancing with the Stars. And on my season was Sean Spicer, who worked in the White House. I'm not a Republican. Thought the man lied the entire time he was, as the press secretary. But when I had the opportunity to be in his company, I was like, well, I'm going to use this. I got canceled. My kids got death threats. It was a mess. I'm talking about like horrible. But during that time, our trailers were right next to each other. And, his administration doesn't support LGBT people or women, single women adopting. And so I would bring my kids to the trailer all the time. Sean would talk to them. He would have conversations. He would say, you're such a great dad. His kids would meet my kids. His kids are younger, but they would play. And then one day I said, hey, Sean, I'm really happy that we're connecting as fathers. And he was like, me too. And I was like, just to let you know, your administration actually would have denied me the opportunity to adopt because I'm a gay man. And he was like, yeah, that's horrible. And I'm like, yeah, so maybe next time you're talking to your constituents, maybe you can share this experience you've had. Simple, not trying to like badger him over the head. Also, he's a vet. So I would have all of my vet friends visit set and come in before we go into set. Like, you all know the process. Yeah. And majority of them were trans veterans. And so he would be meeting them. They would talk about their service. They would talk about all this stuff. And then I'd be like, oh, by the way, my friends who served that you loved, they're all trans. And he'd be like, what? And I'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, I love that you all connected, you know, and that you would love to serve with them because you said you would love to have served with them and you appreciate their, you know, what the work they've done. And I'm like, could you pass that on next time? Because now you've experienced these people and you had a different point of view before you knew they were trans. So does it really matter? And it's like, those are the type of things you have to do, but you can't do them if you don't get next to each other.
I'm with you 100%. I think for him to be able to see and create that connection, it makes him start an internal dialogue.
Yeah, your interaction or interactions with Sean, you know, it's so much more valuable than an angry tweet, you know, telling someone to do something, because it's literally embedded in his heart, and it's not just a memo. It's not just, you know, something that is fighting against who he is, because he has come to learn that you guys are we're all more the same than different.
Agreed. And I'm not saying I changed his heart or minds. I mean, he could still be out there doing like craziness, but I was like, this is the only chance I'm going to get. So let me try. And that's what I think is missing. Thanks for letting me be on my soapbox, because I just went on like 2 major soapboxes.
No, I
like,
love it.
Down with the man. But thanks, I appreciate it.
So tell me, when you were growing up, you have 3 older sisters?
3 older sisters.
So you're the baby. I'm the baby of the family too.
That's like my younger brother. So in my family, it's 4 girls, and my brother's the youngest.
Yeah. The babies are the best, by the way. Just, you know.
I'm not going to argue with that. Cool. Babies are the best. But how was your dynamic with your siblings?
I didn't hang out. We hung out because they had to take care of me. I was the one that always had to get passed around and get taken care of. So they all. So I guess we hung out. They wouldn't call it that.
They wouldn't call it that. Yeah.
But now that we're older, we're like thick as thieves, because our father's still alive, but I've stepped in for the past 10 years, especially when I became a father, became sort of like the patriarch of the family. So like all holidays are at my house, you know, everyone comes, I do a family trip. So now we hang out all the time. We talk all the time. And I just, family is the most important thing to me. You know, you realize as you get older, like, yeah, going out is fun, but like, I'm telling you, I would take, and I'm gonna sound like an old guy now, and I turned 40 in November, but like, I would take a day in the house with my fiance and my kids stopping by, and then some family coming over and we're cooking and eating, and then going to sleep over a club any freaking day.
100%. Same with us. And there's a difference. We love to go out and dance from time to time, but there's a difference of doing that and being like the creepy old guy at the club. Like I'm glad that Linda and I are together, because I have no desire to ever be that person.
You can be the creepy old guy in the living room.
Just with Linda.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Speaking of family, you have a whole other family with Queer Eye, and I want to hear a little bit of how you initially got pulled into the group there, and what that experience has been like for you.
It's great, you know. It's you're managing 4 different other personalities, and we all have the same goal, which is really nice. But, you know, there's times that they get on my nerves, and there's times that they don't, you know. And I think also just naturally you gravitate to people who are similar to you. So we all love each other. We all work really well together. But like Bobby and Tan, I gravitate to more. And this is not shady like with Anthony or Jonathan or anything. But Jonathan is the youngest out of us, and I'm the oldest. So like there's gaps in even our conversations. You know, like he's always on his phone, where I will put my phone down when we go to set and forget about it for, 6-7 hours, and then be like, oh, where's my phone? And it's because I didn't grow up in an age where like checking my phone was often, and like, I don't feel like I have to post every single thing. And so Bobby's the second youngest, and then Tan, culturally, we have similar experiences. So it's great to have them. I mean, it's good. It's like, you can't beat having people you like that you get to go to work with. I mean, it's just the best thing. Like, you get to go to work with your brother. And I'm sure like some days you're like, you get on my goddamn nerves. And other days you're like, this is awesome. This is great.
Yeah.
So it's that same experience.
How did Queer Eye come around for you? Was it you heard a posting about it, or did somebody recruit you and pitch the show, the revamp of the show with you, or?
No, so I had left social services 4 years earlier. to like start this journey of being a host, because that was my dream. And I decided like better now than ever to pursue this dream. And so I had made some success. I was like working for Oprah Winfrey Network for a digital show. Then I worked for HuffPost Live, and that was a thing, as an on-air talent and host. And then I had that MTV show I hosted, but none of them were really popping off. I still, was like making bills just enough, And then the MTV show had finished, and I was in bed watching Watch What Happens Live, and Carson Kressley was on, and he said they were bringing back Queer Eye. And I called my agent the next morning and was like, oh, I got to get on that show. And he was like, they're done with the casting. Sorry, you were shooting your show, so we couldn't put you out for it. And I literally said, I'm not taking no for an answer. Someone needs to see me, please. And not in an asshole way, just sort of like they have to be able to see me. They have to be able to see me. And he called in a favor to the head of casting to say, can you see my client? They hadn't started the chemistry test yet. They had only done the major casting, but they were dwindling it down like the next week to the final 60 to bring for the chemistry test. And she said, we'll give him a shot to get on Skype and sell himself. And if he sells himself, we'll sneak him in. But he has 30 minutes. And I was like, that's all I need. I got this.
Oh
and I watched hours upon hours of the original show to figure out where I would fit in, because they didn't say I could have picked any category. I could have been like, I'm the cook, I'm whatever. I could have been like, whatever. So they didn't say you have to audition for culture. I came on the call and told them what category I fit in. And I was like, well, clearly I don't know how to hammer shit, so I can't be the designer. I burn everything I cook, so that's done. I was like, I'm kind of fashionable, but I was like, my fashion is not for everybody, so I don't know if that works. And then I was like, I'm bald, so that's not gonna happen. So culture was the immediate thing, but I was like, I don't know about art. So I do, but I don't. And so I was like, well, what do I know about? I was like, I know about people's feelings. And so I was like, well, that's missing in this show. And so I pitched in that 30 minutes what I thought was missing and how I could feel like it could change. And they liked it. And they were like, great, we'll bring you in. And when we went to the casting, that chemistry test, there was only one other guy who was talking about culture as feelings. Everybody else owned art galleries, was on Broadway. And I was like, oh, well, great. I've cleared out all of you yahoos because I'm not competing with you all because you're different. I'm different from you. And then I looked at the other guy and I was like, okay, you're single and you don't have any kids, and that's all these other guys. And so I played up being a dad and being immigrant parents. And I was like, I'm just going to play up everything you're not. So that way they have a clear distinction of like, okay, these two people are talking about feelings, but which one do we want? And it worked, because literally they were like, we needed a parent and you were the only parent in the room. And so the fact that you were so open and talking about your kids, it allowed us to immediately see that you were a clearer choice in it. And so I always tell people, first of all, don't be afraid of no's when it comes to going after your dreams and your career, because if you push and try to, have faith, you'll find an opportunity. And then secondly, don't hide any parts of your identity, because if I would have went in that room thinking like, ooh, okay, let me be like them, I would have probably not got the job. But because I was like, oh, you're single, I'm not, I'm gonna talk about me not being single, because then it shows I'm different. And
I mean, hey,
that's so brilliant. I just want to like,
it is brilliant. I will clap on that too.
That's it. People have a fear of being themselves because, like, society tells you who you are is wrong. And so it's like, hide this part of your identity, hide this struggle, seem like everything's good. And I'm like, nope. That's why I don't have, as you got on this interview, you were like, well, what can we talk about? And I was like, anything, because I've had great days. I've also had train wrecks when I was doing 8 balls of cocaine, for a year and a half up and down Hollywood Boulevard in West Hollywood, thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm living the Hollywood life. To then getting sober, like that having a baby mama, to being gay. I mean, like, I'm like, I gotta share it because all of these things make me me and they make me unique from someone else. And I think that's part of my success of why in 4.5 years, 5 years, my career just keeps climbing, because I'm not hiding any part of myself. And I think
you're
people
learning and growing.
Feel very comfortable around me because they're like, oh, we don't have to figure out who this guy is. He's kind of told us already. So great.
Yeah.
Boom.
I'd love to hear just from you, with all of your wisdom and all of your worldly experience, what is some great advice that you can pass on to our listeners just about in life, how to really live your best life, how to embrace life, and also accepting other people into your life?
Yeah, sure. I say the biggest thing that I would probably want to leave people with is comparison is the thief of joy. And I think people need to understand it's important as you go through life, as you matriculate through life, not to compare yourself to other people or other people's experience. And I think it's so important for people to get that, because we end up looking at what other people have and saying, well, why don't I have it? Why has this not happened to me? Why is that not my family? You fill in the blank. And it only serves to stop us from focusing on what's most important, which is the experiences that we have that we can use to create the life we want and deserve. And so to be able to check in with yourself more often of saying, I don't need to compare myself. Who I am as I am is perfect. I am perfectly designed as I am. I'm getting the lessons that I need. And anything that I don't know, I can ask for help, or I have the resources to learn. And I think that's a really big thing, because comparison, especially in the digital age, people compare themselves so often, and that's why we see people feel so isolated, alone, and sad. Don't compare yourself, people. It's only stealing your joy. Love who you are authentically, because who you are is perfect just as you are.
I love it.
Love it. Thank
Absolutely
you so
love
much.
it. Thank you for that. Except for when you have a twin and then everybody compares you to that twin.
That's a whole other conversation.
Or it's less of a comparison. They think you are just one person. So
it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Well, thank you so much for joining. I look forward to coming to one of the house parties when we're all back to our normal routine.
Same. I can't wait to come to a game night. So just invite us over.
For sure.
And remind me about the Houston Rockets, because Daryl will definitely bring us in for a game.
I'm down. Come say hi, Ian. Come say hi to my fiance. Y'all met him before.
Hi, Ian.
Oh, I didn't even talk about. Hey, Ian, how are you?
Hey guys,
Good to see
I gave him a haircut today.
You
Oh,
did.
nice.
Looks
Quarantine
fresh.
haircut.
Looks
I was
good.
like, you did a
What?
pretty good job.
Yeah, looks good. I haven't
need-
cut Drew's hair.
No,
It's
she
so
hasn't.
long.
Hold on, it's
Here,
crazy.
he'll mess it up.
It's
yeah.
it's awful.
But I want him to embrace it. I just want to see where it goes.
I don't look good. I have right here at parts, and so because this kind of grows forward a bit.
Yeah.
And then it parts, and the rest will kind of go back, and so I end up having like a super 70s mop.
I love it.
Right here.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much. We'll let you get on to your other chat,
Good to
but thanks
see
for
you
joining. We'll talk
guys.
to you soon.
Love you.
See you all soon.
Love you.
All right, love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.